Imagine Friedrich Nietzsche, the philosopher of the 19th century, scrolling through social media. He sees tech moguls quoting Marcus Aurelius amidst announcements of new investments. He observes how Stoicism, as a path to success, dominates the lists without any goals, while fitness bloggers preach emotional detachment as the way to achieve the perfect abs. Stoicism is clearly experiencing a cultural renaissance, from leaders in Silicon Valley to famous podcasters, from Reddit forums to bookstores and airports. It seems everyone carries pocket editions of Seneca and preaches the Gospels, focusing only on what can be controlled. This ancient Greco-Roman philosophy, emphasizing emotional self-control and acceptance of fate, resonates in our anxious and uncertain world. But there is one intellectual giant who would look upon this revived Stoicism with thunderous disdain: Friedrich Nietzsche. The German philosopher not only disagreed with Stoicism, but he considered it a profound betrayal of human nature, a philosophy of life denial disguised as wisdom, a spiritual anesthesia masquerading as strength. Today, we delve into this philosophical confrontation between two titans of Western thought, and the stakes are high. They argue about how we should live our lives. The foundation of Stoic philosophy is living in harmony with nature, in accordance with what they perceived as the rational order of the universe. For the Stoics, the cosmos is governed by divine reason. It is a perfectly ordered system where everything happens according to rational principles. This is why Marcus Aurelius could write in his Meditations that everything happening to us is part of a grand plan, and our task is to accept it with dignity. Nietzsche shatters this premise with his characteristic fury. Imagine, he writes in Beyond Good and Evil, you wish to live in harmony with nature? Oh, you noble Stoics, what deceptive words! Picture a being akin to nature, wasteful to the extreme, indifferent to the utmost, devoid of purpose and compassion, without kindness or justice. Imagine indifference as a force. How can one live in harmony with such indifference? For Nietzsche, the natural world is not an ordered system, but an immoral, chaotic force, completely indifferent to human notions of meaning and justice. Just look around. Tsunamis spare no children. Cancer does not avoid the virtuous, and ecosystems thrive through relentless, brutal competition. Nature is irrational and unkind. It is powerful, creative, destructive, and utterly indifferent to our moral categories. Nietzsche accuses the Stoics of profound intellectual dishonesty. They project their moral ideals onto the universe and then claim to derive those same ideals from nature's example. Your arrogance wants to impose your morality, your ideal onto nature and incorporate it into her, he challenges. A Stoic, contemplating the order of the universe, resembles not a scientist uncovering the laws of nature, but rather a child finding faces in the clouds, seeing only what they have already placed there. The Stoic approach to emotions, the desire for detachment and attraction, that is, freedom from destructive passions and the attainment of tranquility. For Nietzsche is not a sign of psychological maturity, but rather a testament to a profound diminishment of human potential. In his book, The Gay Science, he presents a vivid metaphor. The Stoic trains to swallow stones and worms and shards of glass from scorpions without feeling disgust. Their stomach must ultimately become indifferent to everything that chance may bring. This image accurately conveys Nietzsche's main objection. The emotional discipline of the Stoics is not self-control, but self-denial, a conscious resignation to the full spectrum of life. Consider whether a person who feels nothing upon the loss of a loved one is truly stronger than one who grieves deeply. Can someone who is untouched by beauty, passion, or righteous anger truly live a full human life? For Nietzsche, Stoicism is philosophical Botox, dulling the manifestations of life and killing its vital force. The Stoics' search for emotional safety resembles the philosophy of an animal in a cage, where life is reduced to a dull, tamed existence under the illusion of strength. Think about how we approach complex emotions today. When we feel anxiety, we are often advised to simply breathe or focus on what we can control. Classic Stoic advice. But what if this anxiety points to something important that needs to be addressed? What if our anger contains wisdom regarding injustice that deserves expression? The Stoic does not overcome suffering. They merely resign themselves to it, like a patient choosing constant anesthesia over the risky but vibrant fullness of feeling. Behind this pursuit of invulnerability, Nietzsche sees not strength, but fear, the fear of being deeply affected by the unpredictability of life. True strength lies not in remaining unperturbed, but in having the courage to deeply experience and still accept existence. Is tranquility a strength, or is it a concession to fear? Modern Stoics would dispute such a characterization. The philosopher Massimo Pigliucci argues that apathy is not emotional insensitivity, but clarity, the ability to see situations without distortion. Donald Robertson believes that Stoicism is inherently proactive. It is not passive acceptance, but strategic focus on what matters. A modern Stoic would say, we do not suppress emotions, but transform them. We do not resign ourselves to fate. We strategically engage with reality. We do not advise indifference to injustice, but call for pragmatic action. After all, Marcus Aurelius actively fulfilled his imperial duties, rather than simply accepting his fate. Nevertheless, Nietzsche would remain deeply skeptical. Stoics assert that virtue alone is sufficient for happiness. But this idea seems to undermine the creative tension necessary for transformation. When virtue becomes an end in itself, does it not extinguish the risk and passion that drive revolutionary change, such as the fight against climate change? The true Stoic focuses solely on personal virtue, striving to reduce their carbon footprint and live modestly, accepting the fact that the global climate crisis is far beyond their control. In contrast, Nietzsche's approach may encompass a creative fury that fuels movement, a passionate commitment to changing what seems unchangeable. Can a philosophy that resigns itself to circumstances ever truly challenge the status quo? The Stoic sage, this exemplar of perfect rationality and virtue, impervious to the blows of fate, is not an ideal to be emulated for Nietzsche, but rather a fantasy that unfolds. Even the Stoics acknowledged that this image is more theoretical than real, more a star in the sky than a final goal. Nietzsche states, "I do not trust systematizers and avoid them. The desire to create a system is a lack of honesty." Stoic philosophy attempts to impose conceptual order on the chaotic reality of human experience. For Nietzsche, the Stoic sage is not an ideal, but a dead man, too disciplined to realize that he is already dead. This is the philosophical project of the Chuchilnik, which preserves the form of human greatness while stripping it of all its vitality. The lifeless perfection of the sage is not the highest achievement of humanity, but its betrayal. Achieving an alleged perfect harmony through rationality fails to understand what makes us human: our contradictions, passions, and our capacity for both creation and destruction. Nietzsche asks what constitutes the seal of liberation, not being ashamed before oneself. Where Stoicism seeks freedom through rational self-control, Nietzsche finds liberation in honest self-acceptance, embracing those aspects of ourselves that resist rational control. This critique is particularly devastating because it undermines Stoicism not only as erroneous, but also as psychologically impossible. The Stoic view of human nature resembles an architectural blueprint that ignores the real materials for construction. Nietzsche's alternative is the will to power and the Übermensch. Where Stoicism proposes self-control, Nietzsche advocates for self-development. His concept of the will to power is not about domination over others, but about the fundamental striving of all life, growth, complexity, and self-overcoming. While Stoics strive to minimize suffering through acceptance, Nietzsche sees suffering as the transformative fuel for human greatness. Consider whom you would prefer to be: a stone immovable before the storm or the storm itself, shaping the landscape with its force. Stoics aim to be the still ocean, while Nietzsche calls us to be the raging wave. The Übermensch, often translated as the Superman, embodies this philosophy in action. Unlike the static sage, who achieves perfection through rational detachment, the Superman creates meaning through passionate drive, transforming suffering into mastery over oneself. By forming their own values instead of inheriting them, embracing contradiction as strength rather than weakness, and affirming life without metaphysical comforts, they create a deeper, self-sufficient existence. Look at artists who turn personal trauma into powerful works of art, entrepreneurs who face failure time and again before revolutionizing an industry, or activists who channel their anger and sense of injustice into movements that change the world. These are not individuals practicing Stoic detachment from their circumstances, but those who fully embrace their experiences, including suffering, and transform it into something meaningful. Nietzschean flourishing does not promise tranquility, but offers a life filled with intensity, creative power, and joyful wisdom. Like a drawn bowstring, the greatness of humanity arises from opposing forces held in productive tension, rather than resolved into artificial harmony. Where the Stoic sees the storm of human passions as something to be calmed, Nietzsche sees it as energy to be harnessed. The Stoic builds walls against life's tempests, while Nietzsche builds windmills, turning resistance into strength. One philosophy seeks immunity from the chaos of life, while the other strives to ride it like a dangerous and majestic beast. So, what do you prefer, to be a quiet pond or a powerful river carving its own path? Stoicism, with its emphasis on inner virtue regardless of external conditions, carries a conservative impulse. By viewing poverty, oppression, or injustice as a preferred indifference that does not hinder true satisfaction, Stoicism raises difficult questions. If happiness is possible even in conditions of extreme poverty, why challenge the systems that create suffering? If a slave can achieve eudaimonia while remaining enslaved, does that not support existing power structures? This dynamic manifests in modern workplaces, where corporate Stoicism subtly reinforces compliance. Many companies promote Stoic principles through mindfulness programs, radical acceptance, and the mantra of controlling what can be controlled, all while maintaining exploitative practices. Technology firms encourage resilience among overburdened workers, but resist meaningful structural changes, using Stoicism not as a tool for empowerment, but for survival. By teaching employees to adapt rather than organize, Stoicism becomes a philosophy of survival within an unjust system, rather than a means of transforming it. Look at Amazon, where warehouse workers toil in exhausting conditions, while the company promotes initiatives to improve well-being by training employees to manage stress instead of addressing its root causes. Or recall how schools conduct resilience training focused on helping children adapt to an imperfect educational system rather than correcting its flaws. A similar situation exists in politics. For example, Seneca offered advice to emperors on moderation and self-control, but rarely questioned the very legitimacy of the empire. Even when he advised Nero to rule justly, he remained within the framework of a fundamentally unjust system. Stoicism refines individual character, but does not advocate for radical structural changes, focusing instead on maintaining integrity within the existing order, rather than challenging the foundations of power. In contrast, Nietzsche refuses to accept inherited systems as immutable when he declares, "I, the dynamite," which was not mere boasting, but a commitment to creative destruction. If Stoicism offers peace within the system, Nietzsche demands its destruction. He insists that we break the inherited shackles, burn what is lifeless, and create something more aligned with chaotic life energy. One of Nietzsche's most insightful thoughts is that philosophies are never merely abstract intellectual positions, but expressions of psychological types. In The Sweat of the Good, he writes, "Gradually, it became clear to me what each great philosophy was. With knowledge of its author, it becomes a kind of non-arbitrary and unconscious memoir." In relation to Stoicism, this perspective shows why the philosophy may particularly attract individuals with certain psychological tendencies. Those who cannot tolerate uncertainty and seek clear principles to navigate complexities. This does not devalue Stoicism, but places it in context as one possible response to human vulnerability, rather than universal wisdom. Nietzsche's philosophy also appeals to various psychological types, particularly those who experience the burden of suffering more than uncertainty, who find established systems stifling. Each philosophy responds to different existential fears. Stoicism addresses the fear of external forces and internal passions, while Nietzsche grapples with the fear of being overwhelmed by excessive control and submission. Each philosophical system offers a remedy for different ailments of the soul. Consider your own temperament. What frightens you more? Chaos or constraint? Does the thought of losing control terrify you? Or does the prospect of rigid self-discipline feel like a form of death? Your answer may hint at which philosophical approach naturally resonates with your psychological needs. The Stoic and Nietzschean perspectives do not just think differently. They experience the world in distinct ways, finding different aspects of existence either painful or inspiring. The most intriguing tension between Nietzsche's philosophy and Stoicism arises from their seemingly similar views on the acceptance of fate. Nietzsche's concept of amor fati, or love of fate, suggests a complete acceptance of one's life to the extent that one would not wish to change a single moment of pain or joy. At first glance, this seems remarkably similar to the Stoic advice to desire that everything happens as it does. However, this similarity conceals profound philosophical differences. The Stoic accepts fate because it arises from a rational and benevolent cosmic order. This acceptance is based on metaphysical comfort. What happens must happen for the best within a divine plan. Nietzsche's love of fate does not acknowledge such comfort. His universe offers no divine plan, no inherent meaning. His amor fati is a defiance of rational order, a bold assertion that, despite the absence of order, is a creative act that transforms necessity into chosen fate. Nietzsche writes that his formula for greatness for a human being is amor fati, to wish for nothing to be different, neither in the future nor in the past, nor throughout all eternity, not merely to endure necessity, but to love it. This distinction reveals the fundamental difference between Stoic submission and Nietzschean affirmation. The Stoic seeks peace through acceptance of the cosmic design, while Nietzsche creates meaning through the artistic transformation of raw necessity. Let us consider how these philosophies approach personal tragedy differently. The Stoic finds solace in the belief that even terrible events serve some rational purpose within the cosmic order. When a loved one dies, the Stoic reminds himself that death is natural, inevitable, and part of a larger plan that he cannot fully understand but must accept. Nietzsche does not offer such comfort. When tragedy strikes, there is no cosmic meaning to uncover. Instead, he proposes something more radical, a creative transformation of suffering itself, turning the raw material of one's fate into something meaningful, not because it was destined to be so, but because you yourself wish for it to be significant. The artist who transforms grief into a powerful work does not accept fate as the Stoic would. He transforms it through creative will. The contemporary resurgence of Stoicism, with its emphasis on emotional regulation, acceptance of the uncontrollable, and focus on present virtue, would likely appear to Nietzsche as a symptom of our cultural epoch, a time when self-improvement is replaced by mere creativity, and emotional management is supplanted by passionate engagement. What is the greatest thing you can experience? Nietzsche asks in Thus Spoke Zarathustra. This is the hour of great contempt, the hour when even your happiness becomes loathsome to you, as does your reason and virtue. True philosophical growth begins not from a place of satisfaction, but from deep dissatisfaction. Look at how today's cynicism is marketed as a means to enhance productivity, a stress management technique, a method for increasing the efficiency of employees or entrepreneurs. This philosophy is stripped of its profound ethical dimensions and transformed into a psychological tool for better performance within existing systems, rather than questioning or transforming them. In a world facing unprecedented challenges, technological transformations, democratic instability, and an ecological crisis, is calm acceptance truly our highest virtue? Or might we need the creative destruction that Nietzsche spoke of? The Stoic division between what we can and cannot control may seem reasonable, but do meaningful changes not begin precisely with the refusal to accept the supposed limitations on what a person can change? The civil rights movement, the feminist revolution, and ecological activism all began with people rejecting the established boundaries between the manageable and the unmanageable. If they had strictly adhered to Stoic principles, recognizing the social conditions of their time as external factors beyond their control, would these transformational movements have emerged? When Martin Luther King Jr. proclaimed, "I have a dream," did he practice Stoic acceptance of reality or Nietzschean creation of a new reality? Both Stoicism and Nietzschean thought address the fundamental uncertainties of life, but their aims are different. Understanding when to apply each requires recognizing the unique challenges that life presents to us. Stoicism is best manifested in moments of crisis, providing immediate emotional stability. When your flight is canceled and anger will not help, Stoic principles offer practical wisdom. They provide clarity and objectivity in situations that require effective action and help navigate circumstances that truly cannot be changed, such as incurable illnesses or natural disasters. When emotional restraint prevents harm, Stoicism becomes a necessary anchor. Nietzschean thought, on the other hand, is essential when stagnation threatens growth. It thrives in moments that demand creative rethinking. When challenging unjust systems requires passionate commitment, experiencing transformational periods that necessitate embracing uncertainty.